Welcome to That's So Savvy, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories and journeys of remarkable business leaders. Join our host, Nancy Aichholz, a seasoned professional and experienced entrepreneur, on her mission to discover the recipe for business success.
Welcome back to That's So Savvy podcast. I am very excited today to have my very good friend, Julie O'Neill, with me. She is a consummate professional journalist, has been on the air in the business really since 91, but 30 years here in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky region.
Yes.
You've been a reporter. You've been a morning anchor. That's how I really remember you, is that you were just like the best.
Thank you.
I don't watch a lot of television, but I loved being with you every morning.
Thank you.
I love that.
That's the great compliment.
That's how I feel like I know you. So now you have moved from that into having your own lifestyle show, now in the Nati on Fox 19. And you are the author of Bold.
The
book. And I'm telling you, Bold is, to me, that is your calling card. Let's talk about the book. So we'll work backwards from the book to your super savvy career, because I think the book Bold is just you personified. I want to know, why did you write it? And what did you hope your readers would learn from it?
I'm going to dive right in, Nancy.
Okay, please do.
I lost my job. It was not a pretty situation.
And I lost my friend every morning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. There was that moment of, when you hit the floor and you say, what do I do? Actually spoke to my good friend whom you know, Elle Zimmerman, who has produced speaking careers. And I had gone through a workshop with her because I have always loved the speaking piece, be it in a high school classroom or wherever it was. That's where I felt most alive.
Helping me raise money at Aviator.
Yeah.
You just stepped right up and we raised like $15,000 off the bat.
Thank you. That was always what felt the best. And the news career gave me the opportunity to do that. And I realized that's the piece that felt the best. And so I said, I'm going to do that, and sat down and did a deep dive with her. She said, not everybody needs a book, but you need a book because you just have too many stories. So she said, sit down 20 minutes a day and just start writing. A theme will develop, because I've written a million stories but never a book. And that felt overwhelming to me. I don't do anything for 20 minutes a day. Once I sat down and started writing, I got up early in the morning, and then suddenly it was dark outside. And it was long, long, long days of pure joy.
Yeah. I bet it was cathartic after that experience.
It was, because it enabled me to look at it. We women, and no diss to the men, but because of the nature of how we navigate, and you're this way, Nancy, we give 100% to everything, or try to.
Right.
So we're doing this career thing, and we also want to be great mothers and make sure our kids have all that they need to come into their own. And so there's a lot of doing for others, and it moves so quickly. And the news career is stressful and fast paced. And it was like, blah, blah, blah. And then what just happened? What did I just do for more than 30 years?
Wow.
What worked?
You lived your life in sound bites for 30 years.
Yeah. Well, that was a sound bite right there, Nancy. What did I do? What worked? What didn't work? What was the key to it? So I started writing, and naturally wrote about the stories that were kind of the big moments, or the moments that stood out. And as I started writing, what was another thing? What was another piece? What would people want to know about? And what Elle told me was, your book needs to be a gift for the reader. It can't be just an exercise in narcissism of, oh, look at me and what I did, because that's no good for anyone. But what is it you have to give? So as I'd write the stories out, she'd say, go deeper. You're not limited by the time on television, Julie. Don't be a reporter. Take me into it. And that enabled me to relax and really take a time in my life to take a deep breath and go deeper into what I just did.
Right.
And how maybe it could help others.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I love about what you did with this book, is that you were privileged in a way to have all these experiences as an amazing journalist. But you're right. In the moment, it's quick, people see it on television and then they move on. And this way you can take all those amazing experiences that were so much more than the 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds on air and give the backstory. And two of my favorites in your book, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but
that's all right.
Two of my favorites for two different reasons are the one story about how you met Bill Clinton, which was hysterical.
Okay.
But also very motivating because you were young, and you'll tell the story about what happened and how you overcame that. And then the other one, which was tragic. And I remember this day like it was yesterday, when Shannon Marks was murdered in her own home in the morning. She was getting ready for work and somebody came in with a baseball bat and beat her to death, and her husband didn't find her until later in the day. I remember that because we had mutual friends. It was near my neighborhood. We were about the same age. I had children. I don't think she had children yet, but that was just horrible. And you were right in the thick of it. And I love that story, and I love the compassion, but also the fear. So let's talk about both those stories a little bit.
All right. We'll start with Bill. We'll start with
it's
Bill.
A little lighter.
I always think of the song, and along came Bill. I was not even graduated college. I had gotten a job right out of an internship the summer before the year that I graduated. So they say, do you know what you're doing? Oh, yes, of course I do. And I had no idea, but that's what you're supposed to say, by the way.
That's bold.
So I got to be the weekend reporter after I was doing a little segment for a while that was just a once a week. So it was part-time weekends. Got a tip that Bill Clinton, this guy who was running third for the nomination, the Democratic nomination for president, was going to be in town. And if I wanted to grab him in the morning, here's where he's going to be. First of all, I didn't know who Bill Clinton was. and I'm just going to say it because I didn't. He was the governor of Arkansas, but name 6 governors right now. We don't know. I was in school and trying to get classes done and zipping around. And so I had to look up more about him. He was running behind Tsongas and somebody else at that time, but he was going to be at the Hilton Hotel in Baton Rouge, and he was going to jog. Remember how he jogged everywhere in his campaign?
Yeah.
To this little place called Coffee Call. It was like the Cafe du Monde of Baton Rouge, the beignets and coffee and everything. And he was going to spend some time in there with people. The news conference was going to be that afternoon. And I was the reporter who would be covering the news conference with all the other local reporters. But this was my way to get him before and get something one-on-one. So we show up there, and here he comes jogging with a bunch of LSU students right down that street from the hotel to the coffee place. So here I am in my purple power suit and my 4-inch heels, and I'm ready for action. And my first thought with the photographer was, I'm going to just run out there into the street and jog alongside him and get something. So I tried this, and let's just say that didn't work. There's a whole swarming team of reporters and journalists on the national. None of the local people knew, but the national media was following every move because he's a candidate for president. They're rolling their eyes at me. Who's this young girl that thinks she's going to? And so you had to deal with that. And so, okay, didn't work. And my poor photographer, because at that time the microphone was linked with the cord. We didn't have the wireless mics, and he's trying to run along behind us or in front of us like a dog on a leash, and he's rolling his eyes at me, but he was very kind. We get to the side. Let's try something else. We'll go to the coffee call and try to get in place. And so he is going to walk in, and the entourage of media is there, and we're all following behind him, getting the back of his head as he's walking in. So my photographer wisely says, let's go over to that table of veterans, because if he doesn't walk over there, he doesn't deserve to be president.
Sure.
I now realize in retrospect, with a little more insight in life, that was probably all staged. They probably were told to be there.
Of course they
were. But anyway.
But that's okay. They were there.
So we sat up behind the table, and of course he walked right up to the table. So I had the nice shot of him.
Nice.
I take out my mic to pick up what's being said at the table. All of a sudden I'm nudged by this guy, and he says, excuse me, what are you doing? and it's George Stephanopoulos.
Oh,
So remember, George got his start on that campaign as a campaign advisor, along with James Carville, who was the Ragin' Cajun, the Louisiana boy, and they were both characters.
he's taking it down at him if you had your forage.
Yeah, exactly. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just wanted to pick up." And he said, "This is a video op only." And of course, I'm like, "What's a video op?"
Oh,
I was that green. I really didn't know anything. My photographer explains we're not allowed to ask questions. This is just for video. I'm like, okay. Well, James Carville sees this Louisiana girl, a fellow Louisiana, struggling, and I think he felt a little sorry for me. He wanted to throw a bone to the local girl. So he says, "I tell you what, go out to the patio, see where those students are sitting out there. In a moment, Governor Clinton is going to go fill up his coffee, and then he's going to walk out onto that patio to those students. I can't guarantee he will take a question, but that would be your chance." So Bill Clinton goes to fill up his coffee, comes out to the patio, and I say, "Excuse me, Governor," and I'm nervous. And he walked right up to me. I fire a question. He starts answering. Well, this was during the Jennifer Flowers controversy.
Oh, wow.
The national media is jumping over tables and chairs are flying and everybody's trying to get in place to be able to ask a question. By the time they do, he's finished answering and I fire another question along with everybody else. Like in the news conference, Governor.
Yeah.
He takes my question again.
Oh my gosh.
Then finishes his, I don't even know what I asked him, Nancy. Didn't matter. He was talking to me. And so by the time he finishes the second question, I fire the third. He takes my question again.
Wow.
Now I want the golden cutaway. Golden cutaway is where the photographer moves to the back of the person being interviewed and gets that nice wide shot that shows that this person, this important person being interviewed, is talking to me.
You.
Not anybody but me.
Neal.
Proof of performance, had to get the golden cutaway. So I nudge Kenny, and he has photographers on top of him, beneath him, both that were crammed in. It's mayhem. And so I'm like, get the cutaway, get the cutaway. And I'm trying to do this as I'm looking at the governor and listening intently on his every word. So he's trying to navigate around to the other side. As he is doing that, he gets pushed into me by a photographer. I get pushed into Governor Clinton, and Governor Clinton spills his hot coffee all over himself.
No.
And now it's that Lucy of I Love Lucy moment where I'm with my notepad trying to pat the coffee off. I'm so sorry. And in the meantime, Kenny's getting in place for the shot. And as soon as he does, I know I have about a second to get this shot. So I go from this to standing up tall, chin up, that look of professional, hanging on his every word, nodding my head look that you see journalists do. And so we got the shot and I got my 3 questions. And so I had my exclusive one-on-one with the man who would in the future be the most powerful man in the world for 8 years.
Right.
I tell the story in the book. It was a fun story.
He probably remembers that. How could he not remember?
Sure, he does, Nancy.
I think he thinks about it all the time.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything.
But you were bold. There you go. There's your bold.
That was the beginning of it. And the bold is yes, you have fear. It's how you lower the fear enough to get over it. And I liken it to when you look at the Olympics and the 100-meter dash. It's that beautiful finish where the one person edges through in that glorious moment, the chest out and the chin out and won by 1/100th of a second and everyone's to their feet. And then compare that to the pole vaulter. The pole vaulter just has to get the body up over enough and then flop down onto the mat below on his or her back. It's not pretty. It's just about getting up over it. Yeah. And both of those people, if they do their best and win, get to stand at the top of the podium and hear their national anthem. The win doesn't have to be pretty. And when we're early on in our careers, it's often not. And that's okay. Because while those people were rolling their eyes at me, while I failed more and looked more stupid and everything else that day, only one of us had the future president of the United States one-on-one that night on the news.
Absolutely.
And that's a win.
That is a huge win.
Even if the win isn't pretty, a win is a win when you're coming up in your career. And that was the message of that particular chapter.
I love that. And that is so inspiring for young people who are starting out in their careers. I think we're in our perfect society where everything on Instagram is perfect and everything's curated. I think we're losing that element of mess up.
Yes.
Just mess up, make a mess to get where you need to go. Don't mess things up on purpose. You have to be a little messy to grab that success and move forward. So I love that.
And what I found as I was writing all the chapters and doing all this deep dive, if I look back, Nancy, and I'll ask you this question. The mess up, you take the gamble, you roll the dice to set yourself apart. You must, if you want to really, really come into what you can uniquely bring like nobody else. You must roll the dice. 9 out of 10 times it worked.
Right.
If I look back, 9 out of 10 times I did something different, a little bit crazy and over the top, it worked. 1 out of 10 times it was really ugly. Did not feel good.
Right. And unfortunately, that's what we tend to remember.
Yes.
But the reality is you've got 99 out of 100 wins.
Yeah.
And that one thing that you consider a failure that we as a society tend to grab onto. But you've got all these other, and the things that you throw the dice, basically, like you said, to get forward. If we don't take chances, we're sitting in our living room doing nothing.
That's right. And the pain is the best teacher.
Oh, for sure.
So it helps us to tweak and do what we need to do to make sure we don't make that mistake again. And how do we do it better? And that's part of growth in life and makes life interesting.
Right.
But success is what builds our self-esteem and our confidence.
Sure. And gets us out there to do it again.
So bold is not the same as confidence. But as I say in the book, bold will do as your confidence is under construction. And there are things I talk about that help you to build your boldness. One thing I found early on in my career, first time I got on the anchor desk was my first time to be on the anchor desk. You got 3 cameras pointed at you. You have somebody in your ear talking. You have somebody, a floor crew person, giving you directions of which camera. There's so much happening.
Wow.
And you're trying to listen and talk. And so I remember at that time, I pretended I was Connie Chung. Because she was the woman at the time. Remember, she was the first female anchor woman on the evening news and was so composed.
Oh, I know.
And I remember one time she had a little stumble. She said, "Forgive me." And she was so cool the way she said that. And then she continued on and so graceful. So I just kind of took that into my body and pretended that I was Connie Chung. And it relaxed me and I did better. And what I have found is there's something called the Hebbian principle. What fires together, wires together. So when you are pretending, when you are in make-believe mode, it actually helps you to get through that moment. It's why Beyonce for so long pretended she was Sasha Fierce so she could go out on stage and bring it. And we all pretend we're Beyonce when we're trying to dance. And here she is with this made-up character. Why did it work? It's because of the Hebbian principle. It's science. And so it's one of the things that I give to people that fake it till you make it is not just some phrase we use.
Is something.
There's something to it. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I think you've sort of answered my one question about at what point in your career did you realize that you were more bold than others? Because that's basically your calling card is being bold. And I think it was that moment with Bill Clinton and just saying, I'm going to make this happen. And what a turning point for you.
And when we want to build self-esteem in our kids. I remember hearing a person who was speaking one time that was a psychologist of sorts, and they said, telling a kid the kid is great or whatever is not going to build their self-esteem. Winning builds confidence. You have to win.
Right.
Give them opportunities to win. And then the positive reinforcement for that.
Sure.
So in the book, I talk about getting Mother Teresa on the phone and the powerful, life-changing. And through my whole career, she's had influence. And then when Merv Griffin showed up at the station and they thought I didn't know who he was. So I had a little moment where I kind of got to put him in his place, which caused a big laugh. And we ended up having this great interview because I approached it differently. So yeah, that's a little scary, but there's excitement. Once you've had a win, then you have another, because you're trying this differently and uniquely. It's not until you've chalked up a couple of good wins that it starts to take on.
Right.
So boldness is built over time. Right. And that was what happened with me.
And I think those experiences help us to think on our feet. And when you talk about, don't tell your kid all the time that they're great, because if they haven't done anything to be great, then why would they believe that? And then also, they'll never be great because they don't realize they have to make mistakes in order to learn to be great.
My word for the year, last year was bold, Nancy, as the book came out. This year it's trust, because what I'm finding is in trusting God first,
right?
But trust my gut, which is a piece of it.
Right.
And that's another thing I talk about in the book is the science behind gut instinct. And we have more of those neurons in our gut firing than we have in our spinal cord, that we think from our guts. There's power in that, and building research about how important it is to listen to that and why. Giving yourself permission to trust yourself instead of going in with a full plan. I always approached a story with, I'm going to try to get this, this, and this. You always go in with a plan or you overshoot, and then you got to go through all that video. But if you go in saying, and when I speak in public and so forth, trusting that the ability's there.
Right.
It's inside me. So you have a plan, you do your homework, always do your homework, but trust that it's going to be there when you get up on stage or when you get into that interview. And the more you do so, it will come.
And also, I think when you do prepare and then you rely on your gut instinct, it will also tell you when you're in danger. And that brings me back a little bit to this story about Shannon Marks and what happened. So tell your story about how you got involved in that story.
It had been a day or two after the tragedy. I'd already heard the 911 call, which was horrific when her husband found her. He's a beautiful man.
Yeah.
And it was just chilling. We don't, in the news, put all of that on the air, nor should we. And there's an argument we shouldn't put any of it on because it's someone's most vulnerable moment.
Absolutely.
And it's for them. It not only exposes that person in that vulnerable moment, but it also affects us. You watch too much news, too much bad news, it changes us. Right. We need to fill our cups with things that are positive in order to be joyful and live happy lives. So there's a balance. So I went out to the scene, and the detectives are being very tight-lipped because it's just this powerful thing. They want to protect the case, as they should. I needed to have something for the 6 o'clock news. So there's that battle within. I want to win. I want to have something nobody else has. But also, I want to be respectful of these detectives and the victim, not just Shannon, but her husband.
Right.
Who is absolutely distraught and had to be out of his mind. One of the policies that I had when I'd go out is, rather than try to approach the surviving spouse or family member, is to ask the detectives, look, I am here. If he has something that he would like to say or needs to say, here's where I am. Please let him know that I'm here for whatever. And it's okay if he doesn't want to.
Sure.
I think that's just the better way to handle, rather than obviously to get up in someone's face when they're in the middle of tragedy. We weren't getting anything. I was with Chick Poppy, the infamous, renowned Peabody winning photographer who was great at what he did because he had a passion for it. He slept with 3 scanners in his room. He often got to the scene of things before the police did.
Wow.
I was with Chick. I said, Chick, why don't you keep the camera pointed at the house in case they bring something in or out so we have something to talk about. And I'm going to go knock on doors. And so I did, walking around the neighborhood by myself, run into a woman and, excuse me, I'm sorry to intrude on you, but just wanting to see if anybody saw or heard anything given the tragedy in your neighborhood here. And she said, oh, my grandson heard the dogs barking around that time. And I said, really? Is he here? And she said, he's right inside. Go on in. I have an errand to run, or I'm going somewhere. But the door's open, and just tell him I said it was okay. And so I did go in and see the young man, and hi, I'm Julie O'Neill, and here's who I'm with. And he agrees to talk to me for a minute. We sit down at the kitchen table for 10, 15 minutes. I try to prep him for asking him to be on camera, but I want to make him comfortable with me first and all of that. Well, he did come out, and I got him on camera, and we walked over to where Chick was, and it was all good. And then a couple nights later, I'm watching the 11 o'clock news, and another reporter says, there's been an arrest in this murder. Ironically, our Julie O'Neill interviewed him the other day, and here's the video of me talking to him.
Yeah.
And it went through my body and I shrieked, Nancy. It was a guttural, powerful. I already related to Shannon because we, as you said, we're the same age and professional woman. And so when we connect to the victim, it's just more powerful for us. That's the way it works.
Right. It was in our own neighborhood.
And I just screamed, and it could have been me.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was alone with him, and nobody knew where I was.
Right. Wow.
Lesson learned. Yeah. Don't go knock on doors by yourself. And as I say at the end of that chapter, there's a difference between bold and stupid. I learned from that. A crime scene is a place to be respected. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pain around there. It's the victim. It's the family members that are victims. It's the detectives who have to see and hear the worst of the worst that we, the public, are sheltered from for the most part. It's a place that is sacred and to be respected. And you have to, even with your competitiveness, I've got a job to do. There's that piece, but always bear in mind that and be careful with what you're doing. And I had an opportunity many years later to sit down with Norman and talk through. And I was going to try to do a story about what detectives go through. And they said they would talk if he gave his blessing, because that was just a case I saw them really grip by. And he did say, I would like that story to be done, because they were so respectful to me and so good to me and kind. But then they ended up not wanting to do it because they still wanted to protect the case. It had a death spec on it. Wow. And so it never happened. But I shared the story, even though I never got the interview I wanted. There was a healing for me to years later see that Norman was okay.
Yeah.
Because we reporters do experience trauma with what we cover. And I think that was important to say as part of the career.
That's so important for you to say this too, because we see people on our news stations all the time. We don't think about what has gone into that story and not just what just went into that story, but all the things that you have to experience to bring those stories to life and to report to the public. And while we don't need to hear all the gory details, we do need to know what's going on in our community for our own safety and for the compassion that we need to have for other people. And I think that we as viewers forget that you are a human being and you have had to experience. I don't know how you all don't have PTSD with the things that you've been exposed to. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Julie, this has been so fun. We could talk for like the next year.
Oh, goodness gracious,
all the great stories.
And I have you as a quote on my book.
I know. I don't think I've ever been quoted in a book before.
You're someone who I have so greatly admired. Thank you for doing this podcast and for the work that you've done to empower people to come into their unique boldness and
be
bring
savvy.
It. Yes. Yes.
Well, I think you are a super savvy lady, a super savvy friend. And I am so excited about your future with this new show and how you are doing the same thing. You're bringing people in and you're talking about not exactly what's savvy, but it is kind of what's special, what is new, what is unique about all these different people and businesses and ideas in our city. It's a celebration every day to watch you live at 12:30.
On Fox 19 now. Thanks, Nancy. I feel fully alive doing what I'm doing.
Good.
That is a wonderful feeling. Thank you.
That makes me very happy. We are going to wrap up here. Julie O'Neill, but you can find her book, Bold, on Amazon, and we will put that in the show notes.
Thank you. And I'm also on Audible.
Oh, I love it.
If you're a listener in the car.
Are you the
And in Joseph Beth Booksellers. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Nice. And Julie, as you can tell, has a great voice. She's got the great TV voice. So we'll pop that in the show notes too. Oh, I do have to ask one last question because I always like to ask a fun question. What is your walk-on song?
My walk-on song. If I'm speaking on behalf of Fox 19 now, it's the song that I kind of wrote and then had local musicians do. So you'll hear it at the top of the show each day, which is so fun. But I think personally, one that resonates, and there are so many, This girl is on fire.
I love
Yeah,
that.
that'll get you going,
yes,
right? And
yes.
that's the way I like to feel. I want to feel on fire when I walk out there.
That's perfect for you because you are a girl on fire.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us and have a sweet day and be savvy.
To support this podcast, visit us at patreon.com. That's So Savvy Podcast.